When you mention the words invasion and wrestling together, your mind probably drifts back to the infamous ECW and WCW invasion angle that took place in the WWE. It was a strange time to be a wrestling fan, but also an exciting one because you literally didn't know who was going to show up from week to week. Yet, in a manner that one would expect from such a large storyline, it masked over a fair few other times the promotions jumped ship and caused a bit of carnage. So we're going to bypass all of the stone-cold emotional roller coasters and the arguably horrible treatment of most WCW and ECW talent today and look at other invasion examples. So come gather round and let me invade your eyes and ears with terrible comedy, as I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are the 9 best wrestling invasion storylines. Number 9. Jim Cornette brings the NWA to the WWF. Jim Cornette has always been someone with a real firm stance on getting things back to the way things were in pro wrestling. Seeking to replicate the glory days of the territories, he created Smoky Mountain Wrestling in the early 1990s. Now, unfortunately, the promotion didn't last, but that didn't stop him from mounting a mountain invasion in 1998. By that year, the WWF was in the midst of its Attitude Era and was basically the opposite of Cornette's vision of a wrestling product. However, he got into bed with Vince and debuted his NWA group as a heel faction. Jeff Jarrett was the undoubted focal point, wearing the NWA North American Heavyweight title on WWF programming. The Rock and Roll Express, Barry Windham, and a rehash version of the new Midnight Express featured Bob Holly and Bart Gunn, who were also brought along for the ride too. But the experience was a short-lived one though, as WWF fans had a tough time accepting the old-time feel of the NWA as a real threat, and they seemed washed out in the face of an over-the-top and raunchier product that the WWF was presenting. Still, nearly all of the wrestlers featured went on to find success in the WWF, so it's almost less like an invasion and more of a planting of sleeper cells within Titan Towers. My money is on Holly to be the agent that goes rogue, by the way. And there's still time. Number 8. Aces and Eights take over TNA. When Bully Ray defeated Jeff Hardy to win the TNA Heavyweight title at Lockdown 2013, there was some optimistic excitement surrounding the promotion. Ray deserved credit for getting himself into the best shape and shorts of his career, and having him reveal himself to be the power of the biker faction was a twist that got people talking. As the story rolled on, the group's focus changed from beatdowns to trying to wrest power from the organization and take over entirely. It was kind of like an NWO light experience, but with more leather. However, the downfall of the group came when Bully Ray dropped the TNA title to Chris Sabin, and management clearly ran out of ideas for the heel stable. It made little sense for Sabin to be the one to take the belt, seeing as the main event Mafia were presented as the people who were going to put a stop to the gang, and Sabin wasn't even in it. From there, the storyline dwindled into nothing, and fans were left pretty upset at how the push had dropped off so quickly. Number 7. DX lays siege to WCW Nitro. The unusual thing about this particular invasion is that it paradoxically both did and didn't happen. That is to say, unlike the contemporaries on this list, DX's supposed siege of rival promotion WCW in April 1998 was for real, but the consequence led to absolutely nothing tangible besides interest from the local police force in Hampton, Virginia. Whilst WCW's flagship show Nitro was airing nearby, Triple H and his DX cronies hopped aboard a 4x4 with a turret strapped onto the trunk that they were calling a tank and brought their brand of banterific antics to the company's backyard. Manning a megaphone, the renegade group's leader shouted to the gathering crowd outside the arena such amazing quips as "WCW sucks." I mean, truly, Trips was his generation's Hemingway, am I right? Ultimately, though, this was thwarted. Refusing to rise to the bait, WCW slammed the door shut on DX's tank, and that was the end of the invasion. Not a single wrestling match arose from the stunt, but the pretend shots fired nevertheless left DX's mark on the wrestling map. From this point on, WWF were the cool rebellion worth supporting, and their rivals, well, they were mere cowards. Number 6. Randy Savage's ICW take it to Jerry Lawler in Memphis. The crux of each invasion storyline is to fool fans into thinking that the power struggle is real, but very rarely is this the actual case. When it came to the rivalry between Randy Savage and Jerry Lawler in the early to mid-1980s though, things were most definitely grounded in realism. Savage's father ran ICW and the promotion hated Lawler's CWA. The International Championship Wrestling Group was set up outside of the established NWA, meaning that it was viewed with outlaw status. Lawler and Jerry Jarrett did not take too kindly to the group trying to promote in their region, and legal action was filed between both companies. This obviously left a bitter taste in the mouths of many. When ICW started to dwindle though, Lawler and Jarrett agreed to help out. This eased the problems between both parties, but opened up the possibility for a worked feud. Savage still said set to be representing ICW faced LAWLER many times, and fans were told that the future of CWA was on the line during such matches. ICW versus CWA for those reasons was entirely unique, because it was entrenched in reality only later to become fantasy. Number 5. NXT rookies form NEXUS to storm WWE Raw. Stalking John Cena on the June 7, 2010 episode of Monday Night Raw, the NXT rookies looked like they meant business. Entering the ring, they then dismantled Cena, which was WWE's top star at the time, and set about causing havoc as the show went off air. It was an incredibly hot opening to a compelling story, as this hungry pack of young wrestlers were determined to provoke change. But after a sensational first chapter, things began to cool down. Dubbed NEXUS, the collective were not booked effectively following their first appearances. Daniel Bryan was fired for, let me just check my notes here, yes, tide choking and spitting, and when he was brought back, it was on the wrong side of the angle. Plus, Cena went on to crush the group almost single-handedly towards the end, making them look less a threat and more like jobbers to be lost into the mix. Initially, NEXUS was oozing potential. It could have been a truly enthralling story, but as losses began to pile up, so too did disappointment from fans. Number 4. CZW and Ring of Honor go to war. The NEXUS wasn't actually Daniel Bryan's first experience of an invasion-style story. Years earlier, as Bryan Danielson, he had played a crucial part in the rivalry between remarkably different promotions, CZW and Ring of Honor. They both presented completely different, distinctive styles, the former favoring hardcore mayhem and the latter a more traditional in-ring product. In 2005, an agreement between both companies enabled them to run what proved to be an exciting story for all concerned. After his match at CZW's Cage of Death 7 in December 2005, Chris Hero cut a vicious promo on Ring of Honor, slating them for moving into his promotion's territory. This led to a match between Hero and Danielson, during which the Ring of Honor star won. Yet the war was far from over. Hero returned to confront the Ring of Honor heavyweight champion and brought backup in the form of NECRO Butcher and other CZW talent. Even the then Ring of Honor commissioner Jim Cornette got involved. After losing a tooth trying to separate a brawl, he encouraged CZW to show up any time for a fight. At Death Before Dishonor 4 in July 2006, Ring of Honor won the feud by defeating a CZW team inside the Cage of Death. The entire saga was clearly worked, but it was presented so realistically that the fact that there may have been some bad blood between both promotions seemed genuinely plausible, and thus was a joy to watch. Number 3. ECW invades the WWF pre-Attitude Era. In 1997, Paul Heyman was looking for effective ways to help promote ECW's very first pay-per-view. Entitled Barely Legal, the April 13th show was a step into the unknown for Heyman and his company, and so they desperately needed it to be a success. So, striking a deal with Vince McMahon and the WWF seemed like a shrewd move. The WWF would promote Barely Legal on their own programming. In exchange, they would have their pick of the ECW talent. But somewhere along the line, the decision was made to run a mini-invasion of Monday Night Raw with ECW talent, and even stage a few matches featuring names like Taz and Sabu on the WWF flagship. Whilst it was definitely a business deal designed to promote ECW's first ever foray into the pay-per-view market, the hardcore promotion's invasion of WWF shows always felt memorable, because remember, this was before the Attitude Era had fully kicked off, so it was totally unlike anything else on the product at this time. Number 2. The UWF pioneer invasions with New Japan. When people discuss the formation of the New World Order in WCW, most point to an angle co-promoted by the UWF and New Japan Pro Wrestling as an inspiration. The invasion angle presented by both companies is considered one of the first major examples of a staged war between different organizations. Starting in 1984, the Universal Wrestling Federation was a splinter group formed by wrestlers who had left New Japan. The basis of the storyline was pretty simple. UWF talent didn't like how Antonio Inoki had been running things, and they wished to overthrow him for good and prove their way of doing things was far superior. Inevitably, New Japan would come out on top, but the angle did run successfully for a few good years, and UWF versus New Japan matches would routinely headline shows, usually as multi-man tag bouts. And number 1, the formation of the New World Order in WCW. The beauty of Eric Bischoff's plan in the summer of 1996 was pretty much the simplicity of it all. Both Scott Hall and Kevin Nash had decided to leave the WWF, moving to WCW with the promise of more money. Seeing the potential to make further truckloads of cash, Bischoff presented their debuts like an infiltration by the WWF. Dubbed the Outsiders, Hall and Nash taunted WCW by revealing that a third man was working with them to tear down the company from within. At Bash at the Beach on July the 7th, 1996, that man was revealed to be none other than Hulk Hogan. Dropping the big leg on Randy Savage, Hogan turned heel for the first first time in well over a decade and formed with it the New World Order. It was nuclear heat, and one that shifted merch like hotcakes, and all the while it was insinuated that Vince himself was at the head of all of this, sending his top stars to destroy WCW. Almost overnight, the NWO became the hottest story in the wrestling world, and quite probably this is the best example of an invasion storyline paying off that's ever occurred. Well, outside of when your mum lets me invade her cage of death, but that is a different story for another day. And also, my one per list. And there we go, those were the 9 best wrestling invasion storylines. Let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. But before you go, my friends, I hope that you have a bloody great day, whatever you are getting up to. Why? Well, to borrow parlance from my friend Simon Miller, here's why: because you're a bloody legend. And you deserve love, happiness, and success, because we all do. And if you need help achieving any of these goals, then remember, you can ask for help. There is no weakness in that. And yes, I know that it is difficult to do that sometimes, but trust me, you will find that people care way more than you realize. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me at RetroJ over on Twitter. You have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.